Suguru watched Sayla take another picture as they walked through the Atami plum garden. The Polaroid printed, and she allowed the camera to hang around her neck as she waited for the picture to come into focus. When it did, she showed it to them before putting it with the others in the front pocket of the backpack she'd given Satoru to hold when she first began taking pictures. They had a day full of sightseeing before they left on one of the later trains that night. "What else are we going to see today?" Sayla asked as they continued down the path. She and Satoru had planned their trip. Before the sites, they'd chosen several options, and she left it to them to choose the best ones, so everything they were doing that day was like a surprise to her. "Shopping Street and ACAO Forest," Suguru replied. They'd gone to Kinomiya Shrine before coming to the plum garden. "I wish we had come when they were doing the fireworks," Satoru said. "They do them every 3 months, right?" Sayla asked. "They do, and they just did them last month," Kento responded. "But we can go to the fireworks festival in Tokyo. It's in a couple of weeks." "That sounds like fun. I'll have to go shopping for a yukata. I want to wear a traditional dress for it," Sayla said. The image of her in a yukata flashed through Suguru's mind, and he couldn't wait until he saw it in person. "We should all wear one," Satoru commented. "We can all be festive." "I'm not going to say no to seeing the three of you in yukatas," Sayla replied. "You're not going to say no," Suguru asked. "We're not going to say no to seeing you in one." "Hell, in anything, really," Satoru threw in with a smirk, and Kento elbowed him. "Keep your mind out of the gutter," the blonde said. "I think your mind is the one in the gutter since I said anything and you took it as nothing," Satoru countered with a shit-eating grin, and Sayla laughed. "Don't worry, Kento. I take it the same way," she assured, "because Satoru isn't as slick as he thinks he is." "I'm rather clever," he responded. They continued through the garden, with Sayla taking more pictures before they came to a particular tree. It was in full bloom, and Suguru watched her walk over to it, signaling them over. She handed Satoru the Polaroid camera since he had the longest limbs and asked him to take the picture. Sayla checked it once it printed out and came into focus, and she smiled at it before giving Satoru her phone to take another one. They finished the last leg of the garden before returning to the front and exiting. They got into the car and drove to their next stop, the ACAO Forest. They'd chosen to show her a lot of the beauty of Atami for their first trip there. Their visit to the forest went much like the visit to the plum garden. Sayla took several pictures of their surroundings, and they took a few pictures together. She took off the camera and put it into the backpack before they headed back. They were halfway to the entrance when she grabbed his arm. "Suguru, don't you want to carry me the rest of the way?" she asked with a smile. "Sure, little one," he responded, moving in front of her so she could get on his back. He locked his arms under her thighs and couldn't help but squeeze the thick flesh. She rested her chin on his shoulder and kissed the side of his neck, just shy of his scent gland, and Suguru subconsciously tilted his head to give her better access to it, wanting to feel those plush lips on it. She laughed softly, letting him know she knew exactly what he wanted, and she placed a kiss on the gland, then another before rubbing her cheek against his, and his alpha released a pleased rumble. When they made it to the car, he allowed her to slide off his back. "Thank you for carrying me," she said, rising on her toes, and Suguru leaned down to kiss her. "You don't have to thank me for doing something I want to," he responded. They got into the car and headed to do some street shopping. The train was quiet as they headed back to Tokyo. It was only filled to half capacity and most of the occupants were asleep. Suguru watched Sayla as she scrolled through the pictures she'd taken on her phone as she leaned against Satoru, who stopped her every few pictures to ask her to send a particular one to him. Kento sat beside Suguru, reading a book with a small light clip to the back cover. They'd had fun in Atami. Sayla had gotten several souvenirs while they went street shopping and tried a lot of the street food. Suguru honestly wished they'd been staying longer. He supposed that on their next trip, wherever they went, they should try to spend more time there. He enjoyed the uninterrupted time they'd gotten to spend with Sayla, and it only confirmed what he already knew, that the three were fully capable of sharing a mate without things getting competitive, with no one getting possessive. "When did you take these?" Satoru's hushed voice asked. "Anytime the three of you weren't looking." "Then you must not have had many opportunities," Kento replied at the same time Suguru said. "You didn't have a lot of chances then." Suguru didn't know what pictures Satoru was referring to on Sayla's phone, but he knew their attention remained on her throughout the outing, because that was the entire point of it, to spend time with her. If she took them when they weren't paying attention, then she didn't have many of whatever they were. "I did," she replied, putting her phone on the table between them, facing him and Kento. Suguru looked at it, a candid picture of Satoru on the screen. She scrolled, and he saw she'd taken candid photos of all of them. "I have some from each place we went. Even when we were on the beach," she informed. "In many of them, you're looking right at me, but you didn't realize I was taking pictures." She smiled as if she were satisfied with herself for them not noticing, and Suguru couldn't help but chuckle as he pulled out his phone. He brought up his gallery and showed it to her. "You aren't the only one who can be sneaky," he teased, showing her the pictures he'd taken of her throughout the trip. "Great minds think alike," Satoru said. "I took candids of you too." "You mean obsessive minds," Kento jested. "Are you saying you didn't?" Suguru challenged. Kento glanced up from his book. "When have you known me to lie?" he replied before throwing a wink to Sayla and returning to his book as she laughed softly. "That's what we thought," Satoru replied. The rest of the train ride was taken in comfortable silence, and when they arrived at the station, Suguru moved his bag and hers and carried them off the train. Once they were out on the sidewalk, Sayla stretched, and Suguru ordered a taxi. "I'll see Sayla home," he said. "You don't have to do that. I can take a taxi," she replied. "We don't want you out alone this late," Kento responded. "Let Suguru take you pretty." "I don't want him to have to go out of his way." "I don't mind. Besides, I'll stay above the shop tonight," he replied. "Problem solved, so no more protests, little alpha," Satoru said. They waited a few minutes and 2 taxis pulled up at the same time. Sayla kissed both Kento and Satoru goodbye while Suguru loaded their bags into one of the trunks. He knew Kento was staying at Satoru's condo since it was closer to his office. He said bye to both men before they went their separate ways. Sayla yawned, leaning into his side as they headed towards her apartment, and he rested his hand on her thigh. It was after midnight when they pulled up at her apartment. They thanked the driver before exiting when Suguru grabbed their bags. He walked her to the door and she turned to him. "Thank you for seeing me home." He ran his thumb along her cheek. "There you go, thanking me again for doing something I wanted to do." "I guess I'll have to show my gratitude then, since I'm sure you'll say that every time," she replied, draping her arms over his shoulders, one hand going to the back of his neck to pull him down. Soft lips pressed against his, and Suguru wrapped an arm around her to pull her closer. Her body was flushed against his as he deepened the kiss, tasted whatever sweet treat Satoru had given her on the train as her tongue submitted to his. His alpha nudged at him, telling him to take her inside to continue, to push forward, but Suguru reeled that thought in and slowly broke the kiss. "Go inside," he instructed. "Get some sleep." She gave him another soft peck before releasing him. "Okay. I know you're only going a few blocks, but let me know when you get there." He nodded in agreement and watched her enter the apartment, rolling her suitcase behind her. Suguru picked his up and headed down the stairs and then towards his shop. When he was in the apartment above, he sent a text to Sayla, then made a beeline for the bathroom. He needed a cold shower before he would be able to sleep. Satoru sat in his office the next evening. Usually he didn't work on Mondays, but he decided to come in for a few hours since he'd taken Saturday off, just to see if anything happened in his absence. He was sure it hadn't because Higurama hadn't called him first thing that morning about any problems. He told him not to bother him if anything went wrong until Monday morning. He was scrolling through what felt like the 100th website, even though he knew it was probably only the 5th or 6th, and he hadn't had any luck finding anything. A knock on his office door drew his attention. "Come in," he called. Higurama entered the office with a clipboard in hand, and Satoru knew the other man was likely coming with work he wanted Satoru to do. "These are the supply orders I'm sending out. I thought since you were here you could review and sign them," Higurama stated. Supply orders that he normally would have signed first thing Tuesday when he got in. Satoru refrained from signing because Higurama just wanted to give him something to do. The other man set the clipboard in front of Satoru and took a seat in one of the chairs on the other side of the desk. He flipped through the few order sheets and signed them before sliding the clipboard across the desk to Higurama and turning his attention back to the computer screen. "How was your weekend?" Higurama asked. "It was good. I went to Atami and took in some sites," he responded absently as he browsed the website. "What's got you so focused because it isn't work?" Higurama inquired. Satoru glanced up at the other man before his focus drifted back to the screen. "You and Sukuna seem to enjoy forgetting that I am your boss. One of these days I'll fire you both." Higurama snorted. "I'm sure you will." "Before you leave," Satoru said, "I won't be working on the Saturday of the fireworks festival." "I'm sure we'll be able to handle everything," Higurama said, standing, not missing the dismissal that came before Satoru's news. When he was left alone, he continued shopping. The 3 of them had decided against getting Sayla one courting gift from all of them since it would be hard for them to agree on something. They had different styles, different outlooks, and it would be best for them to each get her something and then present them to her at the same time for the first time. Then after that, they could give them to her whenever the desire struck. However, Satoru was having a hard time finding something that felt perfect. He wanted it to be sentimental, thoughtful, but he also wanted people to somehow immediately know it was a courting gift if they were to see it. He was looking for a special piece of jewelry. Traditionally, the first courting gift was something to be worn. It had been that way since courting first came about. While the items they could wear had changed and expanded over time, it was still the first subconscious go-to. After looking at nearly all the pieces the shop offered, Satoru decided it would be easier to find a shop that made custom pieces and have something made instead. Doing it that way meant he could get exactly what he wanted. He grabbed a notepad and pencil from his desk drawer and decided to sketch a design of what he'd been envisioning, but couldn't find. Having a visual representation would make it easier when he found where he would have it made. Satoru would also have to find her a birthday gift, but he figured that would be easier. He already had something in mind for it. He needed to get with Denny again and finalize the plans. Since Sayla didn't know too many people yet, her birthday celebration would be small. The 5 of them, and maybe Sukuna if he could get the day off. That had been what Denny said, and Satoru knew that had been his cue to agree to give the other alpha the night off, but he wouldn't, at least not until Sukuna asked him for it. With that in mind, Satoru made a mental note to introduce Sayla to a few people he thought she might get along with. Not that he wouldn't have minded her spending her free time with the 3 of them. Having her to themselves, he knew they need to give her space. She had Denny, but he learned from Sayla that their schedules often caused them to spend less time together. Pushing that thought aside, he focused on his sketch. He wanted to get it done as soon as possible and commission it to be made. Satoru would like them to give their courting gifts to her at the fireworks festival. It would be the perfect atmosphere. He would run it by the other two once he finished his sketch. A few hours later, Satoru sat in his club, watching the gyrating bodies on the dance floor. His was one of few that pulled in a massive crowd, even during the weekdays. However, it was still early in the night, so he knew more people would trickle in. It would be another hour until that happened. He knew during the week the crowd was at its largest in the last 3 hours before they closed. They closed earlier during the week than they did on weekends, but still managed to make 2/3 of the revenue they did during the weekend. Satoru swirled around the liquid in his glass, the ice clinking softly against the sides, barely audible before taking a drink. It was just pineapple juice, and Sukuna had rolled his eyes as usual when he poured it for him, but Satoru didn't drink often and never drank while he worked, even if he could as a perk of being the boss. His nose twitched with the sudden smell of saturating sweet Omega with a strong undertone of interest, and a second later one stood in front of his table. "Hi," they greeted, voice elevated to be heard over the music. "I was wondering if you'd like some company." "I would not," Satoru replied, and he didn't miss the slight souring of their scent, then the bloom of confusion in it. He was sure they hadn't expected to be shot down. Maybe they shared his mindset of not knowing what rejection was. He supposed he could see it. They were cute, in the way the popular boy or girl at school might have been, but cute had never been something Satoru sought out, and they were far from his type. I'm in a relationship," he responded when it seemed they couldn't form words. Their eyes immediately went to his glance as if being mated was the only form of relationship they considered. He supposed that was often the case for most Omegas and Alphas. It was a biological need to mate, mark, claim, and be claimed, though that didn't hold true for all of them, and since beta markings were hard to make permanent, their outlook on mating was often different. "I see. Enjoy your night," they stated before leaving. No sooner were they gone was he releasing his pheromones. He didn't want their smell to linger, to settle on him. He didn't want to carry it out with him. The thought of doing so made his alpha uneasy, because it wasn't the scent they'd come to crave like it was a vice. Satoru finished the rest of his drink and took the glass back to the bar, leaning over the end and placing it in the container of dirty glasses he knew was there. He got Sukuna's attention and waved at him, a sign he wasn't sure when they started, but told the other alpha he was leaving, and the rest of the night was left in his hands. While Higuruma managed the casino for him, Sukuna managed the club. Satoru had implemented the rule that the bartender on duty was the manager for the night when Sukuna was off, but since the other alpha had the most experience and had been there from the day Satoru opened, it made the most sense for him to manage it. Satoru waved to Pan, who was the scheduled bouncer for the evening. He and Toshi split the week, Pan taking Monday through Wednesday and Toshi taking Thursday through Saturday. He ventured into the nearby parking garage and slid into his car to head home. Even though he dispersed that Omega scent with his own, he still felt like it was on him. Logically, he knew it wasn't, but he couldn't wait to get home and wash the phantom remnants of it off of him.